All right, ready as I will ever be. Cheers. Cheers to energy drinks and rainy nights and late nights and pushing on with your sole purpose, regardless of what's going on in your life. All right, so before we get into this, I need to ground what this channel actually is, because if you're new here, this is not personality typing and it's not astrology in the way most people understand it. So, Heather here with Underwater Panther. I have finally reached my 500 subscribers to get low tier monetization on YouTube. And unfortunately, I still need about 1,200 hours of watch time on my channel to actually be monetized. So I thought I reached a goal. And then I realized that there is still a lot more striving to do. So, striving and strategizing. I need to start making like YouTube shorts to help push watch time. And I just don't exactly have time to do that. So, working on that. So, anyways, back to what we were doing. So, what I'm building here is a full structural system. This is about how the nervous system organizes under pressure, where it starts, what it trusts, what it bypasses, what it delays, and how it resolves reality when something becomes unstable. So, we are in my moral cognitive series here on YouTube. I am breaking down a lot. There is a lot going on here. So, I'm going to already pull up your key card because it's nice to have a visual as I'm talking. So, this is Sagittarius. We were talking about Sagittarius. This is my Astro-Psychological key card. I created this about 8 or 9 years ago. I have currently started getting into the inner and outer masculine and feminine quadrants within the archetype. So, astrologically, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. There is no supposed exaltation. I have put the South Node and Chiron in here in this quadrant. I will break that down later. And then left field, we have Mercury in astrology. And then nothing supposedly, whatever that word is, in fall. But I have put the North Node in Sirius in there. So I will break that down. I have also done that with Gemini's archetype because Sagittarius and Gemini are polar opposites, and supposedly they don't have anything in exaltation in fall. And it's very fascinating when you break that down. I will actually break why that is down for the astrology people. Now, psychologically, the ego is broken into the hero, parent, child, and inferior cognitive functions. So we have introverted thinking, extroverted sensing, introverted intuition, and extroverted feeling. And then also I'm adding in the inner and outer masculine and feminine quadrants, and that explains the archetype's nervous system under pressure, as well as their distorted developmental path through their life. So there's a lot going on here. I'm almost 10 years into this work, so it is getting rather advanced. All right, so what I'm building here is a full structural system. This is about how the nervous system organizes under pressure, where it starts, what it trusts, what it bypasses, what it delays, and how it resolves reality when something becomes unstable. And there are 3 separate layers you always have to keep distinct if you want to make sense of all of this. So I am running 3 different axes. Axis 1 is masculine versus feminine, and that is for the archetype overall. Sagittarius is number 4 most masculine in my masculine through feminine ranking. So this is not about gender. Overall, it's directional force. Does the system project outward and enforce, or does it receive, integrate, and stabilize? So overall, Sagittarius or ISTP is masculine, fourth masculine of the 12 archetypes. Axis 2 is about moral load. What happens after an event? Does the nervous system retain and carry weight, moral weight, across time, or does it discharge, reframe, and move? So, Sagittarius is a motion nervous system. It is a very low ranking moral tier load bearer. I can't remember. I think I'm at number 10. Let me get to my master. I have to pull up my master on my phone here. All right, so Sagittarius moral ranking number. Do not have that part memorized. I cannot lie. It is a lot of information. Okay, so Sagittarius. Oh, wait, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so number 4, masculine. Oh, excuse me, number 5. So I used to have Sagittarius as number 4, and that has been, for some reason, concreted into my memory. But I have redone the masculine through the feminine, so it is updated because of this inner and outer masculine and feminine nervous system and moral load-bearing work I've done. Sagittarius is number 5, most masculine. Excuse me. That is my current stance. So moral load ranking, Sagittarius is number 10 in tier 4. So tier 1 is Capricorn and Scorpio through structural containment. Cancer and Virgo are tier 2 with relational moral load bearing. Taurus and Pisces is in tier 3, and they are conditional moral load bearers, so they don't naturally want to carry moral load, but they absorb a lot. And tier 4 is the motion nervous system. So the top 3 tiers, they I just lost my frame of thought here. So they retain and carry moral load, the top 3. Top 2 really. And then the tier 4, they are motion archetypes, so they discharge, reframe, or move moral load. All right, so that was a mouthful, and I haven't even started yet. All right, so axis 3 is internal architecture, the quadrant system. So this is the actual wiring of the psyche. So that is astrology, psychology, inner and outer masculine and feminine. So that is talking about what the actual wiring of the psyche, what activates first, what comes online second, what gets delayed, and where distortion forms under pressure. Most systems collapse these into one. This system separates them, which is why it can explain behavior at a level most models cannot touch. And once you see it, it cannot be unseen. All right, so now that that is grounded, we can actually look at the Sagittarius or ISTP correctly, because Sagittarius is one of the most misunderstood archetypes in this entire system. And the reason it gets misread is because people try to interpret it through personality, emotion, or consistency. But Sagittarius is not organized around any of those things. Sagittarius is organized around verification. It is not trying to hold reality together. It is trying to determine what survives it. And once you understand that, everything about this archetype stops looking inconsistent and starts looking precise. All right, so what you're about to see is not just a personality breakdown. This is a structural breakdown. We are going through its axis, position, its moral load, its quadrant architecture, its distortion order, why it develops out of sequence, and how that actually feels to other people in real time. Because Sagittarius is not disconnected, is that it is out of order, and that difference matters. All right, so I'm going to explain axis 1, masculine through feminine. Axis 1, I want to break that down just a little bit more. So this is external orientation under pressure. So Sagittarius overall is number 5 masculine, and this is external orientation under pressure. So this answers which direction does energy move when the nervous system is activated. So masculine is, sorry, I had my fan on. All right, so masculine represents projection, direction, enforcing, and initiating. Feminine represents receiving, integrating, attuning, and stabilizing. So this is not about quadrants. It is not about functions inside the psyche. This is overall behavioral vector. Axis 2 is talking about moral load, retention versus discharge. So this is what happens after an event. It answers, does the system keep the moral weight or move it? Retention, nervous systems, store, carry, and metabolize. Motion, nervous systems, discharge, reframe, and direct. So that is my tier 1 through tier 4 system, which is independent from overall masculine and feminine and independent from quadrant structure. All right, so then we have axis 3, which is the internal architecture, nervous system design. So that is the outer masculine, which represents action and enforcement. Outer feminine, which represents interaction and attunement. Inner masculine represents structure and values, and inner feminine represents feeling and perception. So the IM is inner masculine, OM is outer feminine or outer masculine, IF is inner feminine, and OF is outer feminine. So these quadrants answers what activates first inside the system. This is where distortion order happens, survival sequencing, and breakdown of patterns come from. So someone can be overall masculine, but start in an inner feminine quadrant level. So for example, Scorpio. Or they can be overall feminine. So actually, Capricorn is a better example. So Capricorn is number 1 masculine in my most masculine through feminine overall ranking, and they are number 1 moral load bearer. Well, they're the only ones that do that. So Scorpio would be higher. Okay, so actually that was a very good example. Sorry. So Scorpio is rather masculine, but they start in an inner feminine quadrant. Okay, so I get what I was trying to say. All right, so anyways, you can be high masculine, but a low moral load bearer. Like Leo, for example, like Aries and Sagittarius. So actually all the fire signs can be rather masculine overall, but they tend to want to not carry moral load for an extended period of time. They want to move energy around. Alrighty. So axis 1, masculine and feminine, ask where does energy move overall? Axis 2, moral load, what happens to consequence? And the quadrants, inner and outer masculine and feminine, answers what activates first internally. So that's a lot. Masculine orientation, moral load, Sagittarius is low retention and emotion nervous system. All right, so let's get into Sagittarius. I had to do some like overall disclaimers, structural definitions. All right, so before we get into Sagittarius, we need to ground what the system is actually measuring. Because if you try to understand Sagittarius through personality language alone, it will never fully resolve. It will look inconsistent. It will look detached. It will look like someone who moves too quickly, lets go too easily, and processes in a way that feels incomplete to other people. And that misreading happens because Sagittarius is not organized around holding anything in place. It is organized around verification. The system is not concerned with who someone is when they are calm, socially aligned, or performing well in stable conditions. It is concerned with what their nervous system does under pressure. All right, so Sagittarius resolves reality differently than most archetypes because it is not attempting to maintain continuity. It is attempting to determine what is true in a way that survives pressure. It filters experience through a single question: what actually holds when everything else falls away? And once Sagittarius identifies what holds, the rest of the experience loses structural importance. So, very fascinating, Sagittarius. Very fascinating. Sagittarius is like an external Pisces. They can be such a hot mess. Very difficult to understand. Pisces is rather difficult. I think Pisces is easier to understand than Sagittarius. Sagittarius is up there for me for trying to understand what the heck is going on. All right, so Sagittarius sits in the symbolic or moral masculine layer of the system, but that needs to be understood precisely or it gets miscategorized. This is not the kind of masculinity that initiates immediately like Aries, and it is not the kind that builds and maintains structure over time like Capricorn. Sagittarius expresses masculinity through orientation. It stabilizes itself by aligning with meaning, not by controlling the environment or holding it in place. So, where other systems create stability through containment, Sagittarius creates stability through direction. It is constantly adjusting its trajectory based on what proves to be true. It does not need to preserve the past in order to feel stable. It needs to know where it is going and why. That is what gives it grounding. So its masculinity is not about force or endurance. It is about alignment with something that has proven itself through reality. So core driver is Jupiter, ruling Jupiter. At the center of this system is Jupiter, and Jupiter is often reduced to expansion. But here it operates as something far more specific. Jupiter amplifies meaning. It takes what Sagittarius has verified through direct experience and expands it into something that extends beyond the moment it came from. A single outcome becomes a pattern. That pattern becomes a principle, that principle becomes a belief, and that belief becomes direction. This is why Sagittarius often speaks in terms of truth, philosophy, and overarching meaning, even when its understanding came from something very concrete. So they are concrete psychologically in their temperament. Facts. It's all facts. They're such an interesting, just Sagittarius, y'all are so freaking cute to me. I don't want to start ripping into anything yet. Let's get the foundation first. All right, so my little girl is a Sagittarius through and through, sun sign Mercury. She is just I have raised a Sagittarius from birth. Y'all are freaking wild. Stubborn, wild, won't listen, knows everything, extremely intelligent, get out of my way, boss babe. Y'all have insane freaking mental energy and physical energy. I adore it. It's crazy. Y'all are really workhorses. I will give you that. All right, so where was I? This is why Sagittarius often speaks in terms of truth, philosophy, and overarching meaning, even when its understanding came from something very concrete. It is not exaggerating the experience, it is scaling it. Jupiter ensures that what Sagittarius learns is not left isolated. It becomes part of a larger internal map that guides future movement. Sagittarius does not just learn from life, it builds a worldview from what survives life. So in this system, Jupiter is meaning amplification and belief scaling. Jupiter takes verified experience, SE, and converts it into principles, patterns, philosophies, and directional frameworks. It answers, what does this mean long term? What can I build direction on from this? So Sagittarius does not just test truth, it evaluates truth into belief systems. I'm exhausted. It elevates truth into belief systems. Jupiter turns lived experience into guiding law. So whatever Sagittarius verifies through experience, Jupiter expands. One experience becomes a principle, one outcome becomes a philosophy, one truth becomes a guiding system. So Sagittarius does not just learn, it builds belief structures out of what it survives. All right, so moral load tier 4 explanation. Sagittarius operates in low moral load, but that does not mean it lacks morality or care. It means Sagittarius does not retain moral weight. The nervous system, is not designed to store emotional or relational residue across time. It is designed to process, resolve, and release. When something happens, Sagittarius does not ask what needs to be carried forward indefinitely. It asks what the experience revealed. It runs reality through a loop of testing, encountering resistance, adjusting based on that resistance, extracting what holds, and then moving forward. Once that extraction is complete, the experience has fulfilled its purpose. Okay. There is nothing left to retain. This is why Sagittarius can appear to move on quickly. From the outside, it can look like avoidance or detachment, but internally, the system has already reached resolution through understanding. It does not need to hold what has already been converted into truth. And that's because Sagittarius is not organized around holding, it is organized around verification. This nervous system is not tracking who someone is when they are calm, it is tracking what their nervous system does under pressure. So Sagittarius resolves reality differently than most archetypes. All right, so Sagittarius does not retain emotional or relational weight across time because its system resolves through completion via understanding, not through emotional integration first, relational repair first, or prolonged processing. So Sagittarius runs a loop: act, fail, adjust, extract, and move. And once truth is extracted, there's nothing left to hold. All right, so I'm going to talk about the healthy developmental order a little bit because we're going to be breaking down Sagittarius's distortion order. So to understand why Sagittarius operates the way it does, you have to understand what the healthy sequence is meant to be. A stable system begins with perception, allowing reality to be taken in as it is before. Okay, so one moment. I'm going to actually pull this up because I think visually it will help what is going on here. It's a lot to take in. I understand that. And I'm tired. And I'm not really sure how my communication is coming off. Okay, Sagittarius. I'm going to pull up the inner and outer masculine and feminine key card. So that is actually on screen. I almost forgot to do so. All right. There we go. So Sagittarius's distortion order is inner masculine, outer masculine, inner feminine, and outer feminine. So this archetype lines up with psychology. The psychological arena people would say, actually, you know what? I took the time to actually light my candle. So I'm going to see if I can, whoops, make this smaller and put the other key card. I probably won't be able to pull this off. Actually, this is what I'm going to do. Oh, you can't even really see the... I was all excited. I lit my candle and was going to have some fire in the background, but okay, never mind. You can't even see it anyways. All right, so I'm just going to leave that where it was. I'm going to make Sagittarius a little bit bigger and move on with my life. Ridiculous. All right. So this is a foundational video, and it's very important to have all of this on screen, although it's annoying, etc. I get it. All right, so moving on. Moving on. Hair is crazy. It's what it is, what it is. Okay. All right, so a stable system begins with perception, which Sagittarius begins with analyzing. All right, so allowing reality to be taken in as it is before interpretation begins. It then moves into safety, where what has been perceived can be felt and metabolized without overwhelming the system. From there, values are formed, not as defense, but as structured meaning that emerges from what has actually been experienced. Only after all of that does action occur. So this sequence ensures that action is not premature. It ensures that what is done externally is grounded into something internally. It prevents force from being used as a substitute for understanding. It creates containment before movement. So I am actually going to put the integration order on the screen. Healthy. So it's up here. I did that for the other archetypes. I'm not sure why I hadn't done that yet here. All right. Is that all going to fit? Yes, it is. So the healthy order is outer feminine, inner masculine, outer masculine. Sagittarius's distortion order goes inner masculine, inner feminine, outer feminine. All right, so why Sagittarius does not develop this way? Sagittarius does not develop in that order because its system does not trust. It forms in environments where perception alone is not reliable, where what is felt is not stable, and where meaning shifts depending on who is defining it. So instead of beginning with receptivity, Sagittarius begins with verification. It does not assume that what it perceives or feels is enough to determine truth. Sagittarius assumes that truth must be tested. So TI-SE, you are already starting to see how those functions are feeding off of each other. So only after that testing does it begin to understand what the experience meant. And only after that, if it reaches that stage at all, does it attempt to connect or process relationally. This reversal is not arbitrary. It is adaptive. It reflects what the nervous system learned it could rely on and what it could not. So healthy order is perception, safety. So perception with outer feminine, safety with inner feminine, values with inner masculine, and action with outer masculine. All right, so before we explain why Sagittarius does not naturally develop this way, we have to establish why this sequence is the healthy order in the first place, because this order is not arbitrary. It is the order that creates clean containment. And clean containment matters because action without containment does not create maturity. It creates distortion. It creates overcompensation. It creates premature certainty. It creates force before integration. So when I say the healthy order is outer feminine, inner masculine, outer masculine, perception, safety, values, and action, What I am really saying is the psyche is healthiest when it learns to take reality in before trying to control it. That is the anchor. So perception comes first because reality has to be read before it is interpreted. The first healthy movement of a nervous system is not action. It is not conclusion. It is not enforcement. It is contact. Perception is the system's ability to register what is actually here before prematurely deciding what it means. This is why outer feminine belongs first in the healthy sequence. Outer feminine is not weakness, it is not passivity, it is the system's capacity to read the field, scan context, notice tone, detect change, and remain open long enough to receive information before collapsing that information into reaction. Without perception first, the psyche becomes self-referential too early. If it stops asking what is actually happening, what is this environment telling me, what is the tone, pattern, movement, pressure, and atmosphere, and starts asking, what do I already think this means? What do I need to do? How do I protect my position? How do I resolve this quickly? That is not maturity, that is defense. So healthy development begins with perception because perception creates the possibility of accuracy, not certainty, but accuracy. And then comes safety with inner feminine. Safety comes second because what is perceived has to be metabolized inside the body. Once the nervous system takes reality in, it needs somewhere for that information to land. That is inner feminine. This is where perception becomes nervous system reality. Safety does not mean comfort here. It means the system has enough internal containment to feel what it has registered without immediately splitting, collapsing, or forcing premature action. Inner feminine is where emotion, memory, sensation, vulnerability, and embodied meaning are allowed to exist long enough to become information rather than threat. This is why safety comes after perception, because if the psyche perceives but cannot metabolize, then perception itself becomes overwhelming. And when perception overwhelms the nervous system, one of two things happens. The system shuts down and numbs, or the system jumps ahead to control, conclusion, or action to escape the discomfort of what it has felt. That is the point. Healthy development requires that what is seen is also felt safely enough to be integrated. Otherwise, the psyche will treat feeling as danger instead of data. And then we have number 3, values with the inner masculine. Values comes third because meaning must emerge from reality, not override it. Only after the nervous system has perceived and then metabolized what has been perceived does the inner masculine come online in its healthiest form. This is where the psyche asks, what do I believe about this? What matters here? What principle applies? What is true enough to stand on? This is values. Not values as performance, not values as slogans, not values as identity language. Values as internal structure that emerges after contact and containment. This is why values belong third, because if values come before perception and safety, then they are not really values. They are defenses, they are ideology. They're overbuilt frameworks imposed on reality before reality has actually been received. Healthy values are not here to protect the self from uncertainty. They are there to give shape to what has already been honestly encountered. So, healthy inner masculine does not begin with I already know. It begins with now that I have taken this in and metabolized it, what do I stand on? That is a massive difference. And lastly comes the outer masculine with action. Action comes last because force should only move after reality, emotion, and value are integrated. Outer masculine is the delivery system. It is the point where the psyche enforces, initiates, decides, acts, and changes reality. But in the healthy order, action comes last because action is supposed to be the expression of integrated perception, integrated safety, and integrated values, not a shortcut around them. When outer masculine activates too early, the person may look decisive, certain, strong, assertive, fast, impressive, or morally clear. But if perception, safety, and values have not actually been integrated first, then what is happening is not clean action, it is compensation. It is force protecting an undeveloped interior. This is why your core law, the universal core law is so strong. The universal integration core law. Outer masculine should only activate after inner containment is stable. Sorry, my allergies are driving me nuts. My nose was itching. Because if it activates early, truth becomes weaponized, intimacy becomes interrogation, action becomes escape, and certainty becomes a shield against integration. Healthy action is not just movement. It is the last movement in a contained sequence. This is why the order matters. All right, so why this order is healthy for the psyche. The healthy order works because it mirrors how a stable system processes reality. So first, what is happening with perception? Second, can I safely feel and hold what is happening? Third, what does this mean and what do I stand on with values? And fourth, now what do I do with action? So this is not just personality typing, this is containment logic. So if you skip perception, you become inaccurate. If you skip safety, you become defensive. If you skip values, you become reactive or externally defined. And if you skip action, you become passive or ungrounded. So why Sagittarius does not develop this way? So now that the healthy order is clear, Sagittarius makes more sense. Sagittarius does not begin with perception because perception is too open-ended. Perception requires staying receptive long enough to let the environment speak before deciding what it means. But Sagittarius develops in a way that does not trust passive reception as a sufficient source of truth. It does not believe reality should be taken in first and understood later. Sagittarius believes reality must be tested, so it skips ahead. It does not begin with safety either because safety requires allowing feeling, embodiment, and internal receptivity to function as part of the meaning-making process. Sagittarius does not trust that early. Feeling is too unstable, too ambiguous, and too unverified. So inner feminine gets delayed. Instead, Sagittarius moves straight into inner masculine. Not because that is healthier, because that is what felt most reliable. It asks what makes sense, what holds, what can I verify independently. Then it moves to outer masculine. Let me test it, let me throw it into reality, let me see what survives. Only after that does Sagittarius arrive at inner feminine. What did that mean? What pattern was underneath that? What did I actually learn? And then last, outer feminine, how do I connect this? How do I share this? What did this mean in relationship? That is the adaptive reversal. Sagittarius develops in a distorted order because its system was organized around verification before receptivity. All right. So Sagittarius does not develop in the natural sequence of perception, safety, values, action. It was forced into inner masculine with analyze, outer masculine with act, inner feminine with realize, and outer feminine with connection. This happens because early on, Sagittarius cannot rely on belief systems, authority, emotional guidance, or relational consistency. So the system adapts. Truth cannot be trusted unless it is verified. So why this matters so much? All right, so Sagittarius adapted into a sequence where truth was defined before the environment was fully received, action was used before emotion was fully metabolized, meaning arrived after the event instead of during it. Connection came only once the system had already resolved itself privately. So this is not neutral, this is a survival order. And the survival order always tells you what the system trusted first, what it distrusted first, what it delayed, and where it will eventually become imbalanced under pressure. All right, so what healthy integration would look like for Sagittarius? So this is why healthy Sagittarius has to move back towards the natural order, not by abandoning its strengths, but by widening its sequence. Healthy Sagittarius learns to perceive before concluding, feel before testing, include emotional and relational data as part of truth, then act. Not because action is wrong, but because action is cleaner when reality has been fully taken in first. Healthy Sagittarius does not lose its verification instinct. It simply stops treating verification as the first and only valid form of truth. It learns that perception is data, feeling is data, relational impact is data, and truth is larger than what survived confrontation. That is maturity, not less Sagittarius, more integrated Sagittarius. All right, so Sagittarius, the distortion order. So core sequence. Sagittarius moves through inner masculine, then outer masculine, then inner feminine, and then finally outer feminine. It analyzes first, acts second, realizes third, and connects last. This sequence is the backbone of its behavior under pressure. It tells you where the system starts, how it moves, and what it delays. It is not a description of personality alone. It is a map of process. All right, so I think I hammered that pretty well. So now we're going to go into the 4-quadrant breakdown. So we are going to break down the cognitive functions, planetary drivers, the nodal placements, which is very I don't know anyone else putting the nodes in Sagittarius or Gemini. We're going to talk about the asteroid, influence with Sirius. So we have North Node, South Node, and Sirius, and Chiron, the wounded healer. It gives a heck of a lot of depth to Sagittarius. And we're going to also talk about the behavioral output. So we're going to start in the inner masculine with TI Hero and ruling Jupiter. So Sagittarius begins in internal verification. I feel like I need to scoot over a little. All right, so Sagittarius begins with internal. I'm going to move this too. All right. Figure out where I want this stinking thing. I think all right, there. All right, so Sagittarius begins in internal verification. This is where it determines whether something makes sense independently of external influence. Sagittarius does not look outward first. It looks inward and asks whether the structure of something holds on its own. TI creates this internal consistency, while Jupiter expands whatever is verified into a broader meaning system. Together, they form a mechanism that not only determines truth, but scales it into something that can guide future behavior. From the outside, this can feel like distance. Others experience Sagittarius as already forming conclusions before the interaction has fully unfolded. It can feel like being evaluated rather than engaged, as if the system is deciding what is true without including the relational context. So TI Hero internal verification engine. I need a different song already. All right. This is a good one. All right. So TI is internal logical consistency. It asks, does this make sense on its own? Does this collapse under scrutiny? Can this stand independently? This creates self-referenced thinking, independence from influence, and resistance to external authority. This is why Sagittarius does not accept truth socially. It builds truth internally. So Jupiter meaning. Jupiter here does something critical. It takes TI's verified logic and asks, what does this mean beyond this moment? So instead of just knowing something works, Sagittarius turns it into a belief, a direction, a philosophy. So combined function of this quadrant. Truth is internally verified and then expanded into meaning. This is why Sagittarius sounds philosophical, principled, and certain, even when the process was purely experiential. So inner masculine truth must be self-built. So this creates a private self-referenced framework. All right. So it accepts truth because it survives testing. This is why Sagittarius appears detached early, not because it lacks depth, but because Sagittarius refuses to anchor to anything unstable. So how this feels to other people: emotionally distant, already decided, hard to influence, internally closed. It feels like you've already made your mind up to others, Sagittarius. So in Sagittarius is in its starting point, internal verification. Other people don't experience this as thinking. They experience it as distance because it's an internal process. Introverted thinking is an internal process. You are not including other people in your internal process. So they experience this as distance because Sagittarius is not referencing the environment yet. It is not referencing emotion. It is not referencing the relationship. It is referencing its own internal logic. So to others, this feels like being observed, not engaged, being evaluated, not understood, being held at a distance while Sagittarius decides what is true. Even if nothing is said out loud, people feel they're already deciding what this means without including me. So this is where Sagittarius can come off as detached, hard to read, uninterested. Not because it doesn't care, but because it does not trust external input until it has internally verified it. Sagittarius is an introverted overall. You know, it's really wild because Sagittarius is number 5 masculine, so they are very masculine. You will get the masculinity. You will feel and know that Sagittarius is very masculine. But in the same breath, they have a ton of physical energy, a ton of mental energy, but they're introverted. You would never guess. Like they're like Pisces. People can't really tell Pisces are introverted because they're very social. They can be very social. Same with Sagittarius. They can be very social, but both personalities are introverted and they need to recharge their introverted batteries. Wild, wild to me. So they need their alone time. All right, so I want to get into um all right, so we are actually moving on. So I want to let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so yes. Let me recap real quickly, and we are going to get into something extremely fascinating. So intermasculine, TI Hero, and Jupiter represent. So this quadrant represents internal logic, truth verification, self-reference reasoning. Does this actually hold up? Builds internal frameworks first, trust logic over people, tests truth internally before acting, seeks what holds up independently, very independently. They are pragmatic, they are direct, and yeah, so they will not check in with you before making a decision. They're very independent in their decision making. Okay, so this is very fascinating. I'm going to take the key card down. I am going to make Sagittarius smaller. And we are going to talk because we are now moving into outer masculine. And Gemini is Sagittarius's polar opposite. Now, traditionally, if you look here, if I can click on what I actually want to click on. I don't know why they made it so freaking difficult. Okay, so Sagittarius does not have anything in exaltation or in fall astrologically. Gemini does not have anything in exaltation or fall astrologically. Have you ever noticed that in your entire life? It depends on how deep you are into this. So Gemini and Sagittarius are the only two archetypes whose systems are not built around containment. They're built around movement across an axis. So the axis is information, truth, processing, verification, movement, direction. So this is really wild to me. Every other archetype has inherited containment anchors. Capricorn structure, Cancer attachment, Scorpio emotional intensity, Virgo correction, Taurus somatic stability. So those systems are designed to hold, store, or stabilize something. But Gemini and Sagittarius are circulation systems. They do not hold, they move. Motion, nervous systems. Really wild. So it exposes there is less inherent anchor energy in these archetypes. So Gemini and Sagittarius. So Gemini's axis moves laterally across perspectives. So Gemini, we're talking about extroverted thinking and extroverted sensing. Extroversion. So this axis is talking about moving laterally across perspectives in regards to information, ideas, narratives, and interpretations. Gemini distributes energy across possibilities. Sagittarius, with introverted thinking and introverted intuition, moves directionally towards truth, meaning, belief, trajectory, and verification. Sagittarius filters energy towards what holds. Okay, so planets symbolize functions that stabilize identity or experience. But Gemini and Sagittarius don't stabilize. They process, test, move, translate, and refine. So there are no planets in the exaltation or fall. So the Gemini and Sagittarius system is function heavy, not anchor heavy, which means cognitive function. So that is why I can't remember where it took me a very long time, but I ran across some information and I started realizing that the South Node and North Node are imperative with these archetypes. So South Node represents default movement pattern. North Node represents resisted growth direction. Sagittarius still has direction, even if it doesn't retain. All right, so I do want to break this down a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to get into, I wanted to mention that. It's really wild to me. So they have empty quadrants according to mainstream astrology, but if you get very, 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 very deep into this, you start realizing the North Node and South Node energy in these archetypes. So they are not containment systems, they are movement systems. So Gemini operates through processing, Sagittarius operates through verification. Very, very important. All right, so I'm going to take Gemini down now. I really had to visually, I love rewatching my presentations because it helps so much to visually see what is being talked about. Okay. So I'm going to take that down. I'm going to bring this back into more viewable. Okay, so we got everything back. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that before we got into the outer masculine. Okay, so outer masculine, extroverted sensing, parent, south node, and Chiron in exaltation in my system. All right, so once Sagittarius has an internal framework with TI, Hero, and Jupiter, it moves into action. This is not optional. The south node here means that under pressure, the system defaults to movement. It engages reality directly through SE, exposing its internal logic to real-world conditions. Chiron in this position represents the wound and mastery tied to discovering that not everything believed will hold. Sagittarius learns through failure because failure reveals what is false. These elements combine into a loop where action leads to feedback, feedback leads to correction, and correction leads to a more refined understanding of truth. This is not impulsivity, it is a method of learning that relies on direct experience rather than abstraction. So they are very hands-on. They're very, very hands-on experientially to learn. They want to learn hands-on, and they have to make the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over. They learn by falling down repeatedly. And it takes quite a while for them to actually learn from their lessons. Like, I am raising a Sagittarius from birth, and I just, I know she knows, but she just has to learn the hard way. And sometimes I will let her learn the hard way. It's hilarious. They have so much freaking confidence. It really is truly wild. And they're very tactical. Like, they know that they can outthink people, and they're very quick and tactical. But yeah. All right, so from the outside, this feels like unpredictability. It can feel like decisions are being made without consultation. They are pragmatic. They're not going to check in with you when making decisions. Like, movement is happening without shared alignment. Others experience it as being left behind or not considered in the process. All right, so SE, parent, south node, and Chiron is the execution engine. So SE, parent, reality engagement. SE is direct contact with reality. It engages physically, tests environments, responds to real-time feedback. Sagittarius uses SE not to enjoy reality, but to test truth inside it. They're going to be the ones to invent something crazy and then test it first, though, honestly. They can be adrenaline junkies, gearheads, craftsmen. They are pretty wild. Like, I'm in Aries rising, and, like, I get it. A hot mess, like, just wanting to jump into whatever. Jumping into a new thing. All right, so finisher. Sagittarius actually is a finisher, so they do actually have a lot of endurance. If something holds their attention, which is hard, but if something actually does hold their attention, they love tinkering with things. They will finish a project through, like building a car, for example. Restoring a classic car, for example. All right, so south node, default action loop. South node here means under pressure. Sagittarius moves, not reflects, not processes, not connects. It acts automatically. This is not choice. This is neurological default. So south node here is not just past life, like mainstream talks about. Throw that out for this system. So in this framework, South Node represents the path of least resistance under pressure, what the system falls back on automatically. So for Sagittarius, when stressed, uncertain, or destabilized, they go straight into action, movement, experience, and testing. Not reflection, not connection, not feeling. So this is huge because it means Sagittarius doesn't choose to act first. It is neurologically pulled there. All right, so Chiron here represents wound and false belief, mastery through correction. Sagittarius learned what was taught didn't hold, what was believed failed. So it adapted. I will learn through experience, not instruction. So Chiron is the wound and mastery in reality testing. Chiron exalted in the outer masculine means the wound and the gift are in truth through experience. So the wound, early experiences where truth failed. Belief systems didn't hold. Authority contradicted itself. What I was told didn't match what actually happened. The adaptation, I will only trust what I can prove myself. The mastery, exceptional ability to test reality, high tolerance for uncertainty, ability to refine truth through failure, and resilience through correction. So this quadrant becomes pain, action, correction, mastery loop. Sagittarius doesn't avoid failure, it uses failure as calibration. So the south node here means Sagittarius defaults to action under pressure. Chiron means their wound and mastery both live in testing reality. They learn truth through failure, not instruction. So breaking down South Node and Chiron together. So act, fail, adjust, extract, repeat. So this is Sagittarius's engine. Sagittarius doesn't just act randomly. It is running a loop. Moves, South Node, hits resistance, Chiron wound, adjust, extracts truth, moves again. Sagittarius is not impulsive. It is iterative. Every action is part of a correction loop driven by South Node movement and Chiron refinement. Iterative. Geez, I don't know why I can't speak. Probably because it's super, super, super late, aka early. So, what each part does: SE engages reality, South Node pushes action automatically, and Chiron forces correction through failure. So, how this feels to other people: unpredictable, fast moving, non collaborative, and risky, high risk takers. So, you're making moves without including me. So, when Sagittarius moves into action, this is where people start to feel instability or unpredictability or hot mess chaos. Fiery tornado in action. Live hot action from a fiery ass tornado. All right. So, because Sagittarius is not acting to connect, it is acting to test. So, to others, this feels like sudden movement, abrupt decisions, risk taking without consultation, shifting direction quickly. And most importantly, it feels like the person is acting without considering the relational impact first. Even when the action is logical, people experience they're moving without me, they already decided, and now they're just doing it. This is where Sagittarius can feel impulsive, hard to rely on, and difficult to coordinate with. But internally, Sagittarius is not being reckless. It is running a test. The problem is other people are inside the test, whether they agree to be or not. All right, so to recap, outer masculine, SE parent, South Node, and Chiron. So this quadrant represents physical engagement, skill, execution, experiential learning. Acts to test reality, learns through doing, refines through real world feedback. So now we're going to move into the inner feminine with introverted intuition, child, and Mercury in left field. All right, I should not be drinking an energy drink this late, but we are powering through this dang presentation. All right, so only after action does Sagittarius begin to understand what the experience meant. NI, operating as a child function, does not provide consistent foresight. It provides insight after the fact. Sagittarius often realizes the meaning of something only once it has already happened. Mercury then helps articulate that realization, translating internal understanding into communication. This creates a pattern where clarity arrives late. From the outside, it feels like Sagittarius is just now understanding something that others needed it to understand earlier. But internally, this is simply when the system is able to access that layer of processing. So, NI child and Mercury in left field. NI child, delayed pattern recognition. NI is pattern convergence over time. But as a child function, it is inconsistent, it is delayed, it comes in bursts. Sagittarius does not see clearly in real time, it sees clearly after. So, inner feminine meaning arrives after, only after action. Does Sagittarius access inner feminine processing? So this is where pattern recognition and meaning form, but this comes late. Sagittarius does not feel and understand in real time. It understands after. So NI gives Sagittarius flashes of insight, but not continuous foresight, which is why meaning arrives after experience, not before it. So Mercury in left field. Mercury here is not primary. It activates later. It helps Sagittarius articulate insight, connect meaning, and explain patterns, but only after experience is complete. I just realized something. I actually notated this earlier. Every time I listen to my presentation to make sure I don't have like major audio issues and just to see how coherent or not coherent I was, I write notes. And this is a video I want to make. Now, if you notice, I just want to bring this up briefly. If you notice, Pisces, gosh darn it, Pisces and Sagittarius both have Mercury in the left field with an introverted function. I'm going to do a video over this because, oh my gosh, it's going to be a good one. Cannot wait. I'm going to be making that very soon, actually, after I get this darn series done. But anyways, all right, so combined function, experience first, meaning later, communication last. So how this feels to others. Late realization, delayed understanding, too late clarity. Why are you just getting this now? Inner feminine. So this is where things get confusing for people because Sagittarius finally understands what happened, but it happens late. So from the outside, people experience delayed awareness, late realizations, insight after the damage is already done. This is the moment where Sagittarius says, "Oh, I see what that meant now." But to the other person, it feels like you're just now getting it, like, hello. So this creates a disconnect. Sagittarius feels clarity, the other person feels frustration because they needed that awareness earlier in the sequence, not after the event has already played out. But if you didn't Okay, so detachment from outcome. I made a note here and I didn't finish it, but detachment from outcome. I've don't really see just Sagittarius. I don't want to like. I know y'all are sensitive. You have Effie inferior, and it's really late, and I don't want to get too deep into Sagittarius's inner emotional world. I mean, I feel for y'all. Y'all come off as very detached emotionally, um, like affection wise. It's I don't want to get too deep. I'm just gonna keep going. It's just the detachment from the emotional realm is y'all are very blunt. I do love Sagittarius. Y'all are very blunt. The emotional world. I need to make a whole video on Sagittarius's emotional world because it's a lot. All right, so Sagittarius cares about truth of process, not emotional or relational result. So once truth is extracted, outcome becomes irrelevant. So Sagittarius is not attached to outcomes, it is attached to what the outcome proves. All right, to wrap this section up, the inner NI child in Mercury left field, the inner feminine quadrant, represents internal patterning, quiet delayed insight, trajectory awareness, sees patterns in hindsight, develops meaning slowly and over time, understands after experience. All right, so now we're moving into the outer feminine with extroverted feeling inferior, Cirrus as an asteroid. I know not everyone gets into north node, south node asteroids. I do. It's just a part of my system here. So Fe inferior, Cirrus, and north node and fall. So connection is the final and weakest layer. Fe as an inferior function makes emotional attunement inconsistent and often overwhelming. Sagittarius does not naturally regulate through shared emotional processing. Ceres in this position reflects a learned separation between care and truth. The system does not automatically trust emotional support as a reliable source of information. The north node here indicates that connection is the direction of growth, but in fall, it feels unstable and unnatural. This creates a dynamic where Sagittarius may understand everything internally, but still fail to meet others in the moment emotionally. From the outside, this feels like absence. It feels like not being fully seen or met, even when Sagittarius believes it has resolved the situation. So, outer feminine connection last. The final quadrant is relational, and it is the weakest. This includes emotional attunement, co processing, and shared meaning. But Sagittarius does not regulate through these, it regulates through clarity, testing, and movement. So, connection comes after resolution, which creates a gap. Because other systems expect processing together, Sagittarius offers understanding after the fact. All right, so Fe inferior relational instability. Fe is external emotional alignment, but as inferior, it is underdeveloped, inconsistent, and easily overwhelmed. Sagittarius does not naturally attune, co process, or emotionally synchronize. So, Ceres is the care system distortion. Ceres represents how care is given and received. So, Ceres is the little purple hook blob thing you see in the fall. That's my symbol for it. Or it's the universal symbol, but that's what I put in there. So, anyway, Ceres represents how care is given and received. Here, Sagittarius learns care does not equal truth. So it separates emotional support from accuracy. This creates distrust of emotional guidance, difficulty receiving care, prioritizing truth over connection. I literally just had a freaking epiphany. All right, I'm going to say this out loud because I don't want to lose this and I want to write it down when I'm watching this video. I want to do a video about Sagittarius versus Aquarius relational dynamics because this is actually it seems like they would match up pretty well because Aquarius cares about truth and is not so much in the emotional world. They can handle the bluntness of Aquarius and they're not going to be as emotionally triggered. So that is actually a really good alignment, Sagittarius and Aquarius. All right, noted. Sorry, side tangent. Not really. It's a side note. Like, I need to write this down. Okay, so North Node. I have so many ideas for so many different videos. Like, it's coming. I just have to get this series foundational information out there first. All right, North Node and fall. Misaligned growth path. North Node here means growth requires connection. But in fall, it feels unstable, unnatural, and unreliable. So Sagittarius resists slowing down, connecting emotionally, and processing with others, even though that is the integration path. So North Node in fall here is a misaligned growth path. So North Node in the system represents what the system is supposed to develop towards. But in fall, it does not feel natural, safe, or reliable. All right, so for Sagittarius, growth. Why is my email coming up? Sorry, I had a pop up. All right, so growth path equals emotional connection, relational attunement, and co-processing. But the system experiences as unstable, insufficient, unclear, and not truth-based. So Sagittarius often resists the very thing it needs to integrate. So Sirius is not just nurturing, it is how care is given and received. But here's the distortion. Sagittarius experienced early that care did not equal truth, connection did not equal accuracy. So the system separates care, Sirius with truth, Jupiter, and TI. This creates difficulty trusting emotional support, difficulty receiving care as valid guidance, and tendency to override relationship for truth. So North Node in fall here means connection is the growth path but feels unstable. Sirius here shows Sagittarius learned early that care does not equal truth, so they prioritize accuracy over attachment. Combined function, connection is the weakest, least trusted, and last accessed system. So how this feels to others, emotionally unavailable, disconnected, and unresponsive. You never meet me where I was. Outer feminine. So how this feels to others. All right, so it feels like lack of emotional presence, lack of validation, and lack of shared processing. Dismissive, disconnected, emotionally unavailable. All right, so the full sequence, how Sagittarius feels in real time. So if you zoom out, here's what the full interaction feels like. Someone dealing with you. All right, so number one, you pull back internally. Why? Okay, so I worded it differently. So number one, Sagittarius pulls back internally. Why do I feel shut out already? Number two, Sagittarius acts quickly or shifts direction. Why am I not a part of this decision is what other people are asking. Number three, Sagittarius realizes things later. Other people are wondering, why are you just getting this now? Number four, Sagittarius attempts connection after resolution. Others are asking, why does this feel finished for you but not for me? So why this creates relational misalignment? Because Sagittarius resolves internally through truth, but other people resolve through shared experience. So Sagittarius completes the loop and moves on, while other people are wondering or still really feeling, processing, and holding. So Sagittarius is not unaware of others, it is out of sequence with them. Sagittarius understands, then focuses on connection. Others need connection to reach understanding. So why moral load does not stick? Actually, let me do a summary. Brief summary of the outer feminine, Effie inferior, Sirius, and North Node. So this quadrant represents relational awareness or lack thereof in the inferior or fall, emotional connection, social attunement. Weakest layer struggles to emotionally engage. Connection comes last. All right, so why moral load does not stick? So Sagittarius is number 10, I believe, in my moral load. I need a different song. Number 10, Sagittarius is number 10 in my moral load bearer out of 12. So Sagittarius does not retain moral load because it does not anchor experience in feeling or relationship first. I'm going to take this other key card down. I need to give myself a little more room. All right, so I've been sitting all jacked up because I was having to sitting all jacked up so you can like yeah. So anyways, how to get everything on the screen. So why moral load does not stick. Sagittarius does not retain moral load because it does not anchor experience in feeling or relationship first. It resolves through action and internal validation. Once something has been understood, it does not remain as weight. It becomes information and then it is released. Sagittarius does not retain moral weight because it does not begin in emotional memory. It does not anchor in relational continuity. It resolves tension through action. It validates truth internally first. So when something happens, Sagittarius does not store it. It processes it, extracts truth, and releases the rest. So Sagittarius is not attached to outcomes themselves. It is attached to what those outcomes reveal. Once the meaning is extracted, the outcome no longer needs to be held onto. Its value has already been realized. So the pressure point. So the system destabilizes when it cannot move. Sagittarius nervous system destabilizes when they cannot move. Without the ability to act, test, and adjust, Sagittarius cannot complete its process. It becomes restless, agitated, and internally unresolved because the mechanism it relies on to determine truth is no longer available. Sagittarius are so movement oriented, they constantly need to be moving around. All right, so pressure points. Sagittarius, where Sagittarius breaks. Sagittarius is stable as long as they can move, act, test, and verify. It breaks when it cannot. Yeah, so it breaks when it cannot do those things. When forced into stillness, emotional containment, unresolved relational pressure, or lack of action. Okay, so when forced into stillness, emotional containment, unresolved relational pressure, and lack of action. I don't know what I am doing with my wording here. So they don't want to do those things. They don't want to be still. They don't want emotional containment, unresolved relational pressure, and lack of action. That makes them agitated, wanting to move. They get into another project. It's not comfortable for them. So this creates restlessness, agitation, escape behavior, and philosophical spiraling. When unintegrated, Sagittarius can replace responsibility with explanation. It can use understanding as a substitute for repair, moving forward internally while others are still processing the impact. Sagittarius can convert experiences into meaning too quickly, bypassing the layers that require relational or emotional integration. So, shadow, when understanding replaces responsibility. When unintegrated, Sagittarius confuses understanding with completion. It can turn pain into philosophy too quickly, justify behavior through belief, bypass emotional impact, and avoid relational repair. Because once it makes sense, the system is done. But other systems are still carrying the impact. Sagittarius has already moved on. So this is where conflict happens. High moral load bearers, their nervous systems see Sagittarius as avoidant, dismissive, and non-accountable because they track what is still being carried. Sagittarius tracks what has already been resolved. So this is not moral failure, it is structural difference. So how it feels to others, the full sequence. To others, interacting with Sagittarius follows a recognizable pattern. There is an initial sense of distance, as if the system has already processed internally. This is followed by action that can feel sudden or unilateral. Then comes delayed realization, where Sagittarius articulates what something meant. And finally, there is an attempt at connection that often feels too late because the other person needed that connection earlier in the process. So, core relational truth. Sagittarius is not disconnected, it is out of sequence. All right, so final structural truth. So Sagittarius is a non-retentive verification nervous system. It converts experience into truth, amplifies that truth into belief, and uses that belief to orient itself forward. It does not carry what has already been resolved, it moves. All right, so we are finally into the closing. I'm falling apart, hour and a half. I'm tired. I need to go to bed. So Sagittarius does not hold what happened. It asks what survived. And once that has been answered, it is already gone. So, and this is where Sagittarius finally makes sense. Not as someone who doesn't care, but as a system that was never designed to carry. Sagittarius does not hold what happened, it extracts what survived. And once it has that, it moves. And if you don't understand that structure, you will misread this archetype every single time. You'll think it's avoidance, you'll think it's detachment, you'll think it's inconsistency. When in reality, it's resolution happening through a completely different sequence than most people are used to. And that sequence is exactly why it creates both clarity and disconnection at the same time. All right, so in the next video, we're moving into Aquarius. Whew, I'm happy I got this out of my system. I feel so much better. I will probably make one more video on Sagittarius and then move on to Aquarius. I'm not sure I'm going to sit on it for a while. All right, I need to sleep first, for goodness sakes. All right, so I'm either going to move into Aquarius or do another expanded out video of Sagittarius. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at now. All right, so that is all I have for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it was coherent enough. I try to be very organized. Anyways, feel free to leave your thoughts and feelings in the comment section below. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.